No one dared to look him in the eye. His footsteps alone were enough to drain the color from the faces of executives and interns alike. Silence would descend like a heavy fog the moment his towering figure entered the room. People whispered stories behind closed doors, of assistants who vanished after a single mistake, of tears shed in boardrooms, of careers crushed with a single icy glance. He wasn't just a CEO. He was a storm in a suit. And for years, his empire was built not only on power and profit, but on fear. But what no one knew, was that it would all begin to crumble the day a quiet, soft-spoken cashier stepped into the lobby with trembling hands and a heart full of fire. Backhand index pointing right if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and the quiet strength of standing up for what's right. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel Rappel of Hope. It helps us keep sharing real, emotional stories that make a difference. James Harwood built his fortune from the ground up. A child of poverty, raised in a broken home by a mother who vanished into addiction and a father who was never more than a silhouette in the shadows, James clawed his way through life like a man starving for air. He never forgot the sting of being invisible, the ache of empty stomachs and colder nights. But somewhere along the way, his survival hardened into steel. Empathy became weakness. He traded compassion for control. And by the time he sat atop Harwood International, a tech empire that stretched across continents, he had become everything he swore he wouldn't, a man who made others feel as small and powerless as he once did. The staff of Harwood HQ had learned to adapt. Eye contact was avoided. Questions were rehearsed. Emotions were buried deep. Even the most senior executives were reduced to yes men, terrified of missteps. No one dared speak up. Not even when layoffs came like thunderbolts, or when James's temper shattered glass doors in his wake. To most, he was untouchable. And to James, that meant he was safe. That illusion shattered on a rainy Tuesday morning. She was late. Her shoes were soaked. And her employee badge hadn't even been printed yet. Amelia Reyes, a 22-year-old community college dropout with no formal work experience, had landed the cashier role in the building's ground-floor cafe only because the hiring manager took pity on her handwritten resume and saw something kind in her eyes. She wasn't supposed to be anyone. She didn't even want much, just enough to buy groceries for her younger brother, maybe save for night classes, and keep the electricity on in their tiny shared apartment. Amelia knew nothing about corporate culture. She smiled too much. She asked people how their day was going. She gave out extra sugar packets to the interns who looked like they hadn't slept. She wrote little notes on coffee cups, "You've got this, hang in there, you matter." And to everyone's surprise, people responded. Slowly, the icy walls of Harwood HQ began to thaw, at least near the cafe. Executives lingered a little longer. Interns smiled on their way to meetings. For the first time, the building breathed. Then James Harwood came down for a coffee. He didn't speak. Didn't look at her. Just tossed his black card on the counter like she wasn't even human. Amelia, unaware of the social order that made everyone else tremble, simply smiled and asked, "Rough day?" Time froze. The baristas behind her paled. A junior manager who overheard the question quietly backed out of the cafe. But James, he blinked, as if the question short-circuited something in him. And for the first time in years, he didn't have a cruel comeback. He just took his coffee and walked away. But he came back. Again and again. And each time, Amelia treated him like a person, not a king. She talked about her brother's silly jokes. She asked if he'd seen the rainbows after the storm. She once told him he looked tired, and offered him a muffin on the house, even though she technically had to pay for it herself later. Something shifted. Not immediately. But slowly. Then one morning, the shift collapsed. James entered the cafe mid-argument on a conference call. His voice boomed across the lobby, accusing, belittling, degrading a mid-level manager over a minor mistake. The entire cafe fell silent. And when he hung up, face flushed with rage, he snapped at Amelia to hurry up with the damn coffee. The cafe went still. Even the machines seemed to pause. Amelia, with hands slightly shaking, reached for the cup. She wrote something quickly on the lid, passed it to him, and said softly, but clearly, no one deserves to be spoken to like that. Not even behind closed doors. Gasps rippled through the room. James stared at her, stunned. No one had ever spoken to him that way, not in 20 years. His jaw tightened, and for a split second, it looked like he might explode. But instead, he left. The building buzzed. Whispers spread. Many feared she'd be fired on the spot. But days passed, then weeks. Not only did she keep her job, James kept coming back. The next time he ordered coffee, he said, quietly, "You were right." That was all. But something about James began to change. He started asking about the interns. About the staff. He called for meetings with HR, re-evaluated termination policies, set up anonymous mental health check-ins. He started saying please. No one knew why, except Amelia. Over time, he shared things. Little things. That he hadn't slept through the night in years. That he didn't know how to be kind because no one had ever been kind to him. That the day she stood up to him, something broke inside, and somehow, it didn't hurt. It healed. And he started showing up for others too. One day, he paid the tuition for Amelia's night classes. Another, he promoted a janitor who had silently worked there for 15 years without recognition. He started remembering people's names. He started listening. The building changed. And so did he. Amelia didn't just serve coffee. She served a moment of truth. A mirror. A reminder that even the powerful need grace. That no amount of money, control, or silence could substitute the healing power of human connection. Years later, when James Harwood retired and turned Harwood International into an employee-owned company, he didn't give a grand speech. He simply handed over the symbolic keys to the company at a staff gathering, and with misty eyes, thanked the quiet cashier who taught me how to be a human again. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Rapple of Hope. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories that remind us all of the power of compassion, courage, and kindness.